U.S. China trade tensions escalate to unprecedented levels, reshaping global power dynamics. The U.S. China trade war has reached a perilous new threshold, with escalating tariffs and a ripple effect felt across continents. What began as an economic standoff has evolved into a high-stakes global power struggle. Every deal is now a lever, and every decision a strategic message. China is not only clashing with the United States, but also grappling to maintain old alliances and attract new partners as the world increasingly picks sides. India, a formidable neutral player, has made a strategic pivot, signing a landmark trade agreement with the U.S., a move that has infuriated Beijing. In response, China issued warnings, made bold statements, and even called for a UN Security Council meeting to accuse the U.S. of economic bullying. The irony of a nation long criticized for suppressing its own people and stoking regional tensions, now championing international justice, has left the world stunned. Today on WorldView Today, we dive into the intricate chessboard of global trade that is redefining the world order. Each move forces nations to choose between fairness and the shadows of geopolitical bargaining. Stay tuned as we unpack this unfolding drama. A political weapon in a global game. The U.S. China trade war is no longer just about numbers. It has become a political weapon. Tariffs have skyrocketed from 54% to a staggering 145%, dealing a severe blow to Beijing's export ambitions. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, President Donald Trump's strategy targets not just China, but the entire ecosystem of intermediary trade networks Beijing exploits to evade tariffs. China has responded by sending diplomatic notes to 193 countries, urging them not to sign trade deals with the U.S. that harm Chinese interests. Beijing even convened an informal UN Security Council meeting, accusing the U.S. of weaponizing tariffs to bully other nations. Meanwhile, India took decisive action, signing a trade deal with the U.S., announcing cuts to Chinese imports, and raising tariffs on Chinese goods, a diplomatic slap that caught Beijing off guard. The U.S.'s tariff arc strategy is carving deep into China's global export network, setting the stage for an unprecedented UN meeting on bullying and unilateralism. But the question looms, is Beijing falling into the very trap it once used to dominate global trade? In a twist of political theater, China, a regime known for its iron-fisted control, stood at the UN to accuse the U.S. and other democracies of bullying. It's a bold move, but one dripping with irony. Beijing's domestic policies stifle free speech, suppress religious freedoms, and crush dissent. Internationally, it flexes its muscle to intimidate nations that criticize its human rights record or challenge its territorial claims. Countries recognizing Taiwan as a democratic entity face immediate economic and diplomatic pressure from China. Those condemning the detention and re-education of Uyghurs in Xinjiang are similarly targeted. At the UN, multiple diplomatic missions reported receiving direct threats from Chinese embassies, demanding they skip sessions addressing Uyghur issues. This isn't diplomacy, it's coercion, a Cold War-style strategy of control. At the South China Sea, China employs both soft and hard power to intimidate neighbors like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Yet, at the UN, a supposed beacon of peace and international law, Beijing accuses the U.S. of bullying. This is not just diplomatic hypocrisy, it's a brazen moral reversal. Global repercussions. From Canada to India, China's campaign of influence extends to North America. During Canada's election season, Beijing was caught interfering, targeting a candidate, Ray, who openly criticized China's crackdown in Hong Kong. Reports indicate China manipulated platforms like TikTok and Facebook to spread disinformation and discredit Ray, a strategic strike in the realm of information warfare. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance made a pivotal visit to India, meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi amid rising U.S.-India trade tensions. The visit could be a game-changer. If New Delhi opens its markets to U.S. goods, it could ignite both economies. However, India's 70% tariff on American cars remains a sticking point, one that Trump has publicly criticized. The message from Washington is clear. Trade is not a one-way street. Under Trump's renewed leadership, the U.S. is targeting India's $125 billion retail and e-commerce market, where American companies like Amazon and Walmart face systemic barriers. In 2018, Walmart invested $16 billion to acquire a 77% stake in Flipkart, India's leading e-commerce platform. But a year later, New Delhi tightened regulations on foreign companies, a move that blindsided Washington. Trump's stance is unwavering. The U.S., the world's largest consumer market, demands reciprocity. Vance's visit underscored this, balancing tough talk on trade inequities with an offer of historic cooperation. In a joint statement, Trump and Modi set a goal to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by decade's end. High-level talks have finalized terms for comprehensive trade negotiations, prioritizing job creation, resilient supply chains, and mutual benefits. The Steel War, a new front line. As Vance wrapped up his India visit, New Delhi fired the first shot in a new trade battle, imposing a 12% tariff on Chinese steel imports. This wasn't just economic, it was a warning to Beijing. China's steel industry, heavily subsidized by the state, is flooding global markets with cheap, predatory-priced goods, crippling competitors. Unlike other nations that rely on policy support, China treats subsidies as a national strategy. State-backed companies receive free capital to expand, producing far beyond domestic needs and dumping excess steel abroad at unbeatable prices. The goal is not profit, but the deliberate destruction of rival industries. The U.S., Canada, and Europe face mounting pressure as their steel producers struggle against China's state-backed giants. India, emerging as a 21st-century industrial powerhouse, refuses to be drowned in Beijing's flood of cheap goods. The 12% tariff is a defensive move and a declaration of industrial sovereignty. A shifting global order. The U.S.-China trade war is no longer just about economics. It's a test of global order. Nations can no longer sit on the sidelines. India has emerged as a bold player, prioritizing economic sovereignty and aligning with the U.S. to counter China's influence. Meanwhile, Beijing struggles to maintain its grip as the world grows wary of its tactics. China's attempts to rally allies have faltered. A state media claim of a trade alliance with Japan and South Korea was swiftly debunked by Tokyo and Seoul. President Xi Jinping's tour of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Malaysia yielded no strategic breakthroughs, as distrust lingers from past conflicts and coercion. The U.S. is seizing the moment, offering deals to allies and pressuring intermediaries to crack down on China's tariff evasion schemes. South Korea recently exposed a Chinese firm falsifying export origins, prompting Beijing to retaliate with rare earth export bans, a move that only deepened its isolation. A new playbook for power, Washington's strategy is clear. China must play by fair trade rules, or the U.S. will rewrite them. The U.S. is reportedly considering tariff exemptions for nations that impose similar levies on Chinese goods, a cunning move to punish Beijing while incentivizing a balanced trade order. As the world watches, the U.S.-China trade war is reshaping alliances, supply chains, and power dynamics. India's rise, China's stumbles, and America's assertive playbook signal a new era. This isn't just about trade, it's about power, transparency, and the fight for a fairer world. Thank you for joining WorldView Today. Share your thoughts, subscribe if this is your first time, and stay tuned for more insights into the forces shaping our world.